My name is Anna Keller. I am an investigative journalist. I follow evidence. This is evidence log 10. Want to do something in this log that advocates on both sides of the Shroud debate rarely do. I want to tell you what the evidence does not prove. Not because the evidence is weak. The physical evidence examined across the first 9 evidence logs is genuinely anomalous and genuinely resistant to the medieval forgery hypothesis. I stand behind every word of those logs. But there are arguments made in favor of the Shroud's authenticity that the physical evidence does not support. And saying so plainly is part of the forensic journalist's job. The chain of custody is only as strong as its weakest link. If you build an argument on a link that cannot bear the weight, you give the people who want to dismiss the strong evidence exactly the ammunition they need to do it. So this log draws the line. Here is what the evidence establishes. Here is where it stops. The textile is 1st century Levantine. The weave, the fiber composition, the mineral inclusion signature, all consistent with Roman-era production in Syria or Judea. The Masada comparison is documented and peer-reviewed. The blood is real. Hemoglobin, serum albumin, elevated bilirubin consistent with severe physical trauma. The wounds are forensically consistent with 1st century Roman crucifixion. These details are not consistent with medieval European iconography, which consistently gets them wrong. The image cannot be replicated. 35 years after the STURP conclusion that the image is not the product of an artist, no researcher has produced a full replication. The carbon dating is statistically compromised. 2 independent peer-reviewed analyses found problems with the 1988 data that undermine the reported 95% confidence interval. The WAXS dating is incompatible with a medieval origin by a factor of more than 10. The halakhic burial. Evidence is specific and unreplicable. A medieval forger who knew enough to comply with Jewish law governing violent death, and who also knew to leave the burial incomplete. In the specific way, the Gospels describe would have needed knowledge with no documented parallel in medieval Europe. That is the strong case. It does not need embellishment. And it does not need what I am about to discuss. The iconographic argument is the most frequently cited supplementary evidence for the Shroud's authenticity. The claim is that Byzantine depictions of Christ, the Pantocrator icons, the Byzantine coins minted from the late 7th century onward, show a face corresponding in more than 100 points to the Shroud. The correspondence is real. The numismatic scholarship is serious. I do not dismiss it. But the logical structure has a problem. The Shroud's authenticity is itself the hypothesis under investigation. If we do not yet know whether the Shroud is a 1st century burial cloth or a medieval artifact, we cannot use artwork that may have been based on the Shroud as independent evidence. The argument becomes circular. The Pray Codex makes this concrete. The Hungarian illuminated manuscript, dated to approximately 1192 to 1195 AD, contains striking visual parallels. The crossed hands, the herringbone textile pattern, 4 sets of holes in a distinctive arrangement. This is the first definitive historical reference that scholars accept as a likely depiction of the Shroud. 1192 to 1195 AD. The iconographic argument asks us to push the Shroud's documented presence back to the 6th century based on visual correspondences in artwork. But if the first unambiguous historical reference is from the late 12th century, the claim that 6th century artists were working from the Shroud is a theory built on another theory. The physical evidence does not require the iconographic argument, and a forensic journalist cannot build a chain of custody on a circular structure. The second argument I want to examine honestly moves from the unexplained to the supernatural. The reasoning runs: the image cannot be explained by any known human method. Science has tried for 35 years and failed to replicate it. Therefore, the image was produced by a supernatural event, by the glory of the resurrection, a burst of energy so intense it scorched the cloth from within. I understand the appeal of this argument to people of faith. I also understand that it cannot function as a forensic argument. And saying so is not a statement about the existence or non-existence of the resurrection. The argument has a specific logical structure. We cannot explain X by known means, therefore X was caused by God. The problem is not theological. The problem is logical. The inability to explain something by known means is not evidence of supernatural causation. It is evidence of an incomplete scientific understanding. These are different things. Stirp concluded in 1978 that the image is an ongoing mystery. That is the correct scientific position. A mystery is not a proof. It is an open question. The honest response to an open question is continued investigation. What makes the physical evidence compelling is precisely that it does not require the supernatural argument. The textile analysis, the blood chemistry, the WAXS dating, the statistical problems with the 1988 carbon data, these stand on their own forensic merit. When the supernatural argument is made alongside them, it does not strengthen them. It gives critics a reason to dismiss the entire case as religiously motivated rather than evidentially grounded. The chain of custody is strongest when it carries only what it can verify. Here is where the investigation actually stands. The physical evidence is genuinely anomalous. The cloth exhibits properties inconsistent with medieval European manufacture. The image exhibits properties inconsistent with any known artistic or chemical process. The physical aging of the cellulose is consistent with a 2,000-year-old textile and inconsistent with a 700-year-old one. The statistical treatment of the 1988 carbon dating data has been credibly challenged. None of this proves the cloth is the burial shroud of Jesus of Nazareth. The forensic chain does not extend that far. What it establishes is that the cloth is anomalous, that the medieval forgery hypothesis faces serious evidentiary obstacles, and that the question of the cloth's origin and age is genuinely open. The honest forensic position is not belief. It is not dismissal. It is the specific discomfort of a chain of evidence that points in a direction the investigator cannot yet fully follow. Toward a conclusion, the evidence is not yet sufficient to state. That discomfort is not a failure of the investigation. It is what the investigation looks like when it is being conducted honestly. The record is open. The chain is intact to this point. The search continues. Pay attention to what the evidence actually establishes, and to where it stops. If this log raised questions you want to follow further, the full record and primary sources are at searchannakeller.substack.com. Subscribe and follow the investigation as it develops. The search continues there too.